Imagine for a moment the quiet, rhythmic rustle of a soft spring breeze through a weeping willow tree. Imagine the scent of wet earth after a morning rain and the warm, amber light of a sunset filtering through the tall windows of a clinical sanctuary. This is where we begin. This is my consultation room, a place where the clinical meets the compassionate and where the unspoken finally finds a voice. Across from me sits a woman named Martha. At 64, Martha is a force of nature. She is a retired high school principal who spent her career commanding respect with a single look. She spends her mornings in a vigorous yoga flow and her afternoons tending to the local botanical gardens. She is strong, she is disciplined, and she has always prided herself on being in complete control of her life and her body. But today, that ironclad confidence is gone. Martha is perched on the very edge of her chair, her shoulders hunched, her hands white-knuckled as they clutch a damp, crumpled handkerchief. Her eyes, usually so bright and piercing, are fixed steadfastly on the intricate patterns of the Persian rug beneath her feet. Dr. Tarai. "Stones," she whispers, her voice thick with a heavy, suffocating shame. "I went for a light jog yesterday, just a mile. I've run that mile 1,000 times. But yesterday, I couldn't even make it back to my driveway before I realized my leggings were wet. It's been happening more often. Every time I sneeze, every time I laugh at a joke from my grandchildren, I feel that terrifying, humiliating slip of control. I've been doing my Kegels, I promise. I squeeze until I'm blue in the face. But it's not working. Am I just falling apart? Is this what it means to grow old?" I looked at Martha, and I didn't see a woman falling apart. I saw a woman whose inner architecture was missing its most vital form of maintenance. I saw a woman who had been sold a partial truth, that squeezing was enough. "Martha," I said, leaning forward and lowering my voice to a comforting, clinical tone. "Kegels are the sit-ups of the pelvis. They are fine, but they are only one chapter of a much larger book. Your pelvic floor isn't just a group of muscles you squeeze when you're bored at a red light. It is a dynamic, living, reflexive hammock that requires deep, unconscious engagement to stay resilient. And for a woman in her second spring, the most effective, most natural, and most comprehensive workouts for that hammock is a regular, weekly practice of sexual release. Today, we are going to explore the clinical, biological, and neurological link between sexual pleasure and pelvic integrity. We are going to look at why skipping your pleasure workout leads to the weakening of the bladder's gates, how an orgasm provides a high-intensity interval training session for your internal organs, and how we can reclaim your sovereignty, not through squeezing, but through joy. Act 1. The architecture of the living floor. To understand why Martha was leaking, we must first understand the magnificent, hidden architecture she was trying to support. The pelvic floor is not a single muscle. It is a complex, multi-layered basin or hammock of muscles, ligaments, and connective tissue that stretches from your pubic bone at the front to your tailbone, coccyx at the back. It is the floor of your core, the 3 layers of the basin. In my clinical practice, I describe the pelvic floor as a 3-story building. The first floor, superficial layer. These are the muscles closest to the skin, including the bulbocavernosus and the ischiocavernosus. These muscles wrap around the vaginal opening and the clitoral bulbs. Their job is to engorge with blood during arousal and provide the initial snugness of the opening. The second floor, the urogenital diaphragm. This middle layer is the gatekeeper. It provides the primary support for the urethra, the small tube that carries urine from the bladder. This layer is what creates the seal that keeps you dry. The third floor, the levator ani, this is the massive, deep hammock. It is the primary lifter. Its job is to hold your organs, bladder, uterus, and rectum in their proper place and provide the core stability needed for walking, jumping, and laughing. In our younger years, these 3 layers are naturally springy. They react instantly to a cough or a jump. But as we enter the second spring, the decline in estrogen causes the collagen in these tissues to thin. The hammock starts to sag, the gates of the urethra become less snug. If we don't actively maintain the spring, the architecture begins to fail. Act 2, the pleasure workout versus the pleasure workout. The Kegel Martha, like so many women, believed that Kegels were the only answer. But here is the clinical reality. Kegels are a voluntary, conscious contraction. You are telling your brain to squeeze. It is a top-down command. An orgasm, however, is an involuntary, reflexive contraction. It is a bottom-up neurological event, the HIIT. Training for the pelvis. During an orgasm, the pelvic floor muscles undergo a series of rapid rhythmic contractions, typically occurring at intervals of 0.8 seconds. These aren't just squeezes, they are deep, multi-directional pulses that engage the entire pelvic basin, from the superficial muscles to the deep levator ani. The fast twitch advantage. Incontinence is often a failure of fast twitch muscle fibers, the ones that need to snap shut instantly when you sneeze. Kegels mostly train slow twitch endurance fibers. Orgasmic contractions are one of the few ways to naturally fire the fast twitch fibers in the pelvis, teaching them how to react with speed and power. The flush mechanism. Unlike a static Kegel, which can actually restrict blood flow if held too long, causing muscle fatigue, the pleasure workout involves vasocongestion, a massive flood of blood into the pelvic tissues. This is followed by the pumping action of the contractions, which flushes out metabolic waste and brings in fresh oxygen. It is like a deep cleaning for your muscles. Martha, I explained, a Kegel is like doing a bicep curl with a soup can. An orgasm is like doing an Olympic-level athletic sprint. If you want to stop the leaks, you need the sprint. Act 3, the use it or lose it principle, sarcopenia of the pelvis. In medicine, we use the term sarcopenia to describe the age-related loss of muscle mass. We see it in our arms as we lose our tone, and we see it in our legs as we lose our balance. But we often forget that sarcopenia happens in the pelvis too. When you skip your weekly pleasure workout, the pelvic floor enters a state of atrophy through disuse. The downward spiral of inactivity, decreased proprioception. Proprioception is your brain's ability to map where a muscle is. When you stop engaging in self-pleasure, the brain's map of the pelvis begins to dim. This is why many women find it harder and harder to feel their pelvic floor as they age. The gait failure, as the middle layer, the urogenital diaphragm, loses its tone, the support for the urethra diminishes. This leads to stress incontinence, the leaking that happens during a sneeze, a cough, or a jog. The desire drought. Because the muscles are becoming brittle and thin from lack of blood flow, arousal becomes harder to achieve. This leads to less activity, which leads to more atrophy. It is a self-perpetuating cycle of decline. If you don't use those muscles for pleasure, I told Martha, your brain eventually forgets how to use them for support. You aren't just getting old, Martha, you're becoming untrained. Act 4. The estrogen drought and the collagen connection. We cannot talk about the pelvic floor without talking about the hormonal environment. In our 60s, our estrogen bank account is low. Estrogen is the biological glue that keeps the connective tissue and collagen in the pelvis elastic and plump. The seal of the urethra. The urethra is not just a tube, it is a tube surrounded by a cushion of vascular tissue. When estrogen is high, this cushion is thick, providing a watertight seal. When estrogen drops, the cushion thins. Sexual pleasure acts as a natural irrigation system. While it doesn't replace estrogen, the massive increase in blood flow during arousal helps to hydrate the perivaginal and periurethral tissues. It brings nutrients to the collagen-producing cells, fibroblasts. Regular irrigation keeps the area flexible. This flexibility is what allows the urethra to close tightly and, more importantly, stay closed when pressure is applied to the abdomen. Act V, the 4-week pelvic rebound. Protocol. Martha was skeptical, but she was also desperate. She wanted to dance at her daughter's wedding without the fear of a leak. I gave her a specific 30-day pelvic rebound plan. This is not about performance, it is about functional maintenance. Phase 1, irrigation and awareness. Days 1 to 10, goal, to re-establish the blood flow bridge and the brain's map of the pelvis. The ritual, every other day, spend 15 minutes in preliminary stimulation. Use a high-quality, water-based, osmolality-balanced lubricant. The action, focus on the lighthouse principle. Slow, steady touch away from the clitoris, moving inward. The medical intent, Do not seek a climax. Simply feel the warmth and the throb of blood entering the tissues. You are watering the garden. You are telling your brain, this area is still alive. Pay attention. Phase 2, Integrated Engagement. Days 11-20. Goal, to combine voluntary strength with reflexive blood flow. The ritual, during your arousal sessions, perform 3 slow lift contractions. Imagine you are trying to sip a smoothie through your vaginal opening, lifting the pelvic floor towards your belly button. The rule, hold for 3 seconds, but this is the clinical secret. Relax for 6 seconds. The medical intent, most women over-squeeze and never fully relax. A muscle that cannot relax is a muscle that cannot respond with power. You are training the range of motion of your hammock. Phase 3, the HIT reset, days 21-30 goal, to achieve the reflexive reset, orgasm once or twice a week. The ritual, use the clitoral awakening and G-spot blend techniques to move toward a release. The action, when the contractions begin, do not try to control them. Let them wash through the pelvis. The medical intent, these involuntary pulses are the sprint your pelvic floor needs to regain its snap. After the release, stay in the afterglow. This is when the prolactin and oxytocin settle the muscles into a state of high-tone relaxation. Act 6, the resilience of Martha. Martha returned to my office 6 weeks later. The transformation was visible before she even sat down. She walked with her shoulders back, her chin up, and a certain spring in her step that had been absent for months. Dr. Derais, stones, she said, and for the first time she was looking me right in the eye. I went to my bridge club yesterday. I laughed so hard at a story that I nearly fell off my chair. And nothing. I stayed perfectly dry. But more than that, I feel connected to my center again. I didn't realize how much of my confidence was tied to that internal hammock. I'm not falling apart. I'm just back in training. Martha's success wasn't a miracle. It was functional restoration. By reintroducing the pleasure workout, she had rehydrated the urethral cushion through regular blood flow, fired the fast twitch fibers through involuntary contractions, remapped the pelvis in her brain, allowing for a faster reflexive shutdown when she laughed. Act 7, Beyond the Bladder, the sovereignty of the core. As a physician, I care about your bladder, yes, but I also care about your sovereignty. Incontinence is one of the primary reasons women over 60 begin to shrink their lives. They stop traveling, they stop dancing, they stop laughing loudly because they are afraid of the slip. When you lose control of your gaits, you often feel like you've lost control of your womanhood. You feel like a leaky vessel rather than a vibrant woman. Reclaiming your pleasure workout is an act of biological rebellion. It is saying, my foundation is still mine. My joy is still functional. I am still an integrated, vital being. Act 8, the clinical longevity of the pelvis. Why does this matter for the next 20 or 30 years of your life? Preventing prolapse, a strong, regularly pulsed pelvic floor keeps your organs, bladder, uterus, rectum, in their proper anatomical place. This prevents the sag that often leads to invasive surgeries in a woman's 70s. Core stability and balance. Your pelvic floor is the bottom of your core. A strong pelvis leads to better balance, less lower back pain, and a more graceful, confident gait. The dopamine immune link, the hormones released during your pleasure workout, oxytocin and DHEA, strengthen your immune system and your mood. A happy pelvis often leads to a happy heart. Summary. Your pleasure is a vital sign. So, what really happens to your pelvic floor when you skip your weekly pleasure workout? It sags, it thins, it forgets its job, and eventually, it lets you down. But the second spring is about rediscovery. It is about realizing that your body still has all the tools it needs to stay resilient. It just needs you to pick them up and use them. Prioritize the pulse of blood flow over the squeeze of a Kegel. Commit to the sprint of a sexual release at least once a week. Hydrate the tissues with the best lubricants and the most patient, lighthouse touch. Laugh loudly, knowing your foundation is strong. Thank you for being part of this clinical conversation. If you have struggled with the leaks or the sagging of the second spring, please know you are not alone. Share your thoughts in the comments, and let's continue to build our strength from the inside out. Remember, your pleasure is not an indulgence, it is your foundation. Treat it with the reverence it deserves.